Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the large window on the ship's bridge. Space stretched out before him, filled with distant stars. His ship, the U.S. Defender, was the biggest and strongest ship humans had ever built. It was moving toward the edge of space that belonged to a new alien race called the Nigma. Jake had been in space for 20 years. He had met many different alien races during that time. Some were friendly, like the blue-skinned Altarians who loved art and music. Others were careful and business-minded, like the Centauri who always wanted to make deals. But Jake had never met aliens quite like what they were hearing about the Nigma. Commander Lisa Barnes walked up to him. She was the ship's expert on alien life forms. Her face looked worried as she held a data tablet in her hands. "Admiral, the reports keep coming in," Lisa said. "The Nigma have taken over 3 whole star systems in just 2 years. They're not just conquering planets. They're doing terrible things to the people living there." Jake took the tablet and looked at the information. Pictures showed burned cities and empty worlds. The reports talked about entire races of intelligent beings who had simply disappeared. Some races had been made into slaves. Others had been killed off completely. "What about the Keth?" Jake asked. He remembered hearing about them before. They were a peaceful water-dwelling race who lived on ocean worlds. Lisa's face grew darker. "Gone, sir. All of them. The Nigma drained their oceans and took all the water for their own worlds. Every single Keth died of thirst." Jake felt anger growing in his chest. In all his years meeting alien races, he had learned one important rule. Most species could be reasoned with. Most had some sense of right and wrong. Even the most aggressive aliens usually had limits to their cruelty. Captain Ryan Kelly entered the bridge. He was a calm man who had spent his career talking to difficult alien races. He would lead the team that would try to communicate with the Nigma. "Are we ready for first contact?" Jake asked him. Ryan nodded. "Dr. Amy Watson has been working on their language for weeks. We can understand their basic communications now. Ben Harper has studied what we know about their culture. It's not much, but we have enough to start." Jake walked to the center of the bridge where all his officers could hear him. The bridge was busy with people working at computers and watching screens. Everyone knew this was an important moment. "Listen up, everyone," Jake said. "We're about to make contact with a new alien race. But this isn't like our other first meetings. The Nigma have been hurting innocent people. Our job is to make them stop." A young officer named Tom Davis spoke up. "Sir, what if they don't want to listen?" Jake looked at him seriously. "Then we make sure they understand the consequences of their actions." The ship moved closer to Nigma space. On the screens, they could see the border where human space ended and Nigma territory began. It was marked by the wreckage of several alien ships. The Nigma had destroyed anything that tried to enter their space. Dr. Amy Watson was working hard at her station. She was humanity's best language expert. If anyone could talk to the Nigma, it would be her. "I've got their main communication frequency," Amy said. "But Admiral, their language is strange. It's very harsh. Almost every word sounds angry or threatening." Ben Harper looked up from his research. "That matches what I've learned about their culture. They seem to think that being cruel makes them strong. They see kindness as weakness." Jake made his decision. "Prepare the first contact message. Send it on all frequencies they use." The message was simple and clear. Humans wanted peace. They wanted to trade knowledge and goods. They respected the right of all intelligent beings to live free. But they also warned that hurting innocent people would have serious consequences. The crew watched their screens as the message was sent out into space. It traveled at the speed of light toward the nearest Nigma world. Now they had to wait for an answer. Hours passed. Then their communication systems picked up something coming back from Nigma space. But it wasn't words. It was the pieces of their message probe, destroyed by Nigma weapons. "They shot down our messenger," Tom said, shocked. Then their screens lit up with an incoming message. The image that appeared made several crew members step backward. The alien looked like a giant snake with arms. Its skin was dark and covered in scars. Its eyes were yellow and filled with hate. When it spoke, Dr. Watson translated the words. "Small meat things dare to threaten the great Nigma Empire? You are nothing but food waiting to be eaten. We will come to your worlds. We will feast on your children. We will use your bones to decorate our ships." The message ended with horrible laughter. The bridge was completely silent. Jake had met many aliens, but none had ever threatened to eat human children before. None had ever called humans meat things or talked about using their bones as decorations. Commander Barnes spoke first. "Admiral, I don't think these beings can be reasoned with. They're not like other aggressive species we've met. They see all other life as food." Captain Kelly nodded. "In all my years of diplomacy, I've never encountered anything like this. They didn't even read our message before destroying it. They just saw it as a threat to their power." Jake stared at the empty screen where the Nigma leader had been. In 20 years of space exploration, humans had made friends with 17 different alien races. They had solved conflicts through talking and compromise. They had built a reputation as fair and peaceful neighbors, but the Nigma were different. They had chosen to see humanity's offer of peace as weakness. They had threatened Earth's children. They had made it clear that they planned to continue their campaign of destruction across the galaxy. Jake turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we need to call an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. And tell them..." He paused, thinking carefully about his next words. "Tell them we may have found a species that can't be saved through diplomacy." As the Defender turned away from Nigma space, Jake wondered if this would be the first time in human history that they would have to choose between peace and the survival of innocent beings across the galaxy. The Nigma had made their position clear. Now humanity would have to decide how to respond. The stars looked the same as always, but Jake knew that everything had changed. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, an empire of monsters was planning to spread their cruelty across the galaxy. And for the first time in his career, Jake wasn't sure that talking would be enough to stop them. 3 months had passed since the terrible first meeting with the Nigma. Now Ambassador Carol Martinez stood in the Great Hall of Harmony Point, the biggest space station in the galaxy. Representatives from 19 different alien species sat in their special chairs, each designed for their unique body shapes. Carol looked around the room. The blue Altarians sat quietly, their large eyes full of sadness. The tall Centauri representatives whispered among themselves, probably calculating the cost of any action they might take. The warrior race called the Corvan sat straight and alert, their 4 arms crossed over their armored chests. "Friends and allies," Carol began, "we have called this emergency meeting because of a new threat to all peaceful life in our galaxy." She pressed a button and the lights dimmed. Holographic images filled the center of the room. The images showed worlds that had once been green and full of life. Now they were gray and empty. Cities that had once been home to millions of beings were now piles of rubble. "This is what the Nigma Empire does to every world they conquer," Carol said. "They don't just take over planets. They destroy everything living on them." An Altarian representative named Veltar spoke in his musical voice. "Surely there must be some mistake. No species would completely destroy other intelligent life. There must be some reason for their actions." Carol activated another hologram. This one showed creatures that looked like large seals with blue skin. They were swimming in clear ocean water, playing with their young. "These were the Keth," Carol said. "They were artists and poets. They never fought wars. They spent their time creating beautiful music and caring for their children. The image changed. Now it showed the same ocean world, but the water was gone. The ocean floor was cracked and dry. Thousands of Kef bodies lay scattered across the empty sea bottom. The Nigma drained every drop of water from their world, Carol continued. They watched the Kef die of thirst while they loaded the stolen water onto their ships. When the last Kef died, the Nigma leader was recorded laughing. The room fell. Silent, several representatives looked sick. Even the tough Corvan warriors seemed shaken by what they had seen. General Pete Williams stepped forward. He was Earth's top military leader, a man who had spent his life studying warfare and protecting innocent people. The Nigma are not like other aggressive species we have dealt with, Pete said. Most warlike races fight for territory or resources. Some fight for honor or revenge. But the Nigma fight because they enjoy causing pain and death. He activated new images that showed Nigma cities. The buildings were made from the bones of giant creatures. Streets were decorated with the skulls of different alien species. In the center of each city stood huge statues made from the preserved bodies of conquered enemies. They don't just kill their enemies, Pete explained. They turn them into decorations. They make art from the bodies of the beings they murder. A Centauri representative named Zexlon spoke up. But surely they can be negotiated with. Every species has something they want. We could offer them trade agreements or territory. Dr. Susan Blake walked to the center of the room. She was humanities' leading expert on how alien minds work. She had spent weeks studying everything humans knew about the Nigma. I have analyzed every communication we have received from the Nigma Empire, Susan said. I have studied their language, their culture, and their behavior patterns. My conclusion is simple. The Nigma cannot be reasoned with. She paused to let that sink in. The Nigma see all other life forms as inferior. Not just less advanced, but actually less real than themselves. In their minds, killing other intelligent beings is no different from humans cutting down trees or eating animals. They literally do not believe that other species deserve to live. The Altarian Veltar made a sound of distress. But that cannot be true. All life is sacred. Surely they understand this. Susan shook her head sadly. I'm afraid not. The Nigma language has no word for mercy. They have no concept of unnecessary cruelty because to them, no cruelty is unnecessary. They believe that causing pain makes them stronger and that showing kindness makes them weak. Carol stepped forward again. Based on Dr. Blake's analysis and General Williams' intelligence reports, Earth proposes one final attempt at communication with the Nigma Empire. What kind of communication? Asked a Corvan warrior named Greyktal. We will send a small fleet to the edge of Nigma space, Carol explained. We will broadcast a final warning on all frequencies. We will give them one last chance to stop their expansion and release the beings they have enslaved. The room erupted in discussion. The gentle Altarians worried about the morality of threatening another species. The practical Centauri calculated the economic costs of a potential war. The warrior Corvan nodded their approval. Veltar spoke for many when he said, "But what if they refuse your warning? What if they continue their expansion toward our worlds?" Carol looked around the room, at all the different species. Some were small and weak, others were strong and fierce. Some were old and wise, others were young and energetic. But they all had one thing in common. They were all intelligent beings who deserved to live free and safe. If they refuse our warning, Carol said quietly, then humanity will do what must be done to protect innocent life. The Centauri representative Zexlon leaned forward. You speak as if humans could defeat the entire Nigma Empire alone. They control 47 star systems. Their military is massive. General Williams smiled grimly. The Nigma aren't the only ones who have been expanding over the past 2 centuries. Humanity has been preparing for threats like this since we first left Earth. What does that mean? Graktal asked. Pete looked at Carol, who nodded slightly. It means that what the galaxy knows about human military capability is only what we have chosen to show you. We have always believed in peace, through strength. But when peace fails, we are prepared to use that strength to protect our friends and allies. The vote was close, but the Galactic Council agreed to support humanity's final warning mission. Many representatives hoped the Nigma would see reason. Others feared what would happen if they didn't. As the meeting ended, Carol walked with Pete toward their ship. The space station was full of beings from dozens of different worlds, all living and working together in peace. Do you really think the Nigma will listen to our warning? Carol asked. Pete looked out at the stars through a large window. Somewhere out there, the Nigma Empire was growing stronger every day, enslaving more innocent beings and destroying more worlds. No, he said honestly. But we have to give them the chance. When what comes next happens, we need to know that we tried every possible peaceful solution first. 3 ships left Harmony Point that day. The Defender, the Guardian, and the Sentinel carried humanity's final message to the Nigma Empire. What happened next would determine the fate of countless innocent beings across the galaxy. As the ships jumped into hyperspace, Carol hoped they were making the right choice. But deep in her heart, she knew that some evils were too great to ignore, and some monsters too dangerous to let live. Captain Tony Garcia stood on the bridge of the Guardian as his ship moved through space toward the Nigma border. Behind him flew the Defender and the Sentinel, 3 human ships carrying the most important message in galactic history. Tony had been chosen to lead this mission because he never lost his temper, even in the worst situations. He would need that calm nature today. The 3 ships were about to enter the most dangerous space in the galaxy to deliver a message that could prevent a war or start one. Captain, we're approaching the edge of Nigma space, reported his navigator Sam Johnson. Sam was young but skilled, and he had plotted their course to stay just outside Nigma territory while still being close enough for their message to reach every Nigma world. All ships, take position, Tony ordered into his communication device. Begin broadcasting the warning message on all frequencies. The message was simple and direct. Dr. Amy Watson had translated it into the Nigma language perfectly. It said that humanity spoke for the Galactic Council and all peaceful species. The Nigma had one final chance to change their ways. They must stop expanding into other territories. They must free all enslaved beings. They must accept help to become a peaceful civilization. The message also made clear what would happen if they refused. Humanity and its allies would take action to protect innocent life throughout the galaxy. For 3 days, the human ships broadcast this message. They sent it on every frequency the Nigma used. They repeated it every hour, making sure every Nigma leader would hear it clearly. Commander Helen Davis worked at her station, listening to Nigma communications. Helen was the fleet's intelligence officer, an expert at understanding enemy messages and plans. What she heard made her blood run cold. Captain Garcia, Helen called out. I'm picking up Nigma military communications. They're mobilizing their entire fleet. Tony walked over to her station. Are they preparing to attack us? Helen shook her head. No, sir. They're preparing for something much worse. They're planning a massive invasion of human and allied space. They're talking about harvesting billions of beings for food. On the main screen, an incoming message appeared. The image showed the same snake-like Nigma leader they had seen before. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood dozens of other Nigma commanders, all holding weapons and wearing armor made from alien bones. When he spoke, the automatic translator turned his words into human language. Pathetic humans, the Nigma Emperor said. You dare to give orders to the mighty Nigma Empire? You are nothing but insects waiting to be crushed. The image changed to show Nigma soldiers dragging captured Keth prisoners into a large room. The Keth were the few survivors from their destroyed ocean world, beings who had been kept alive as slaves. "Watch carefully, little humans," the Emperor continued. "This is what happens to those who think they can threaten us." What happened next was so horrible that several human crew members had to look away. The Nigma killed the Keth prisoners slowly, making them suffer as much as possible. They did this while laughing and making jokes about how weak their victims were. But the worst part came at the end. The Emperor held up the body of a young Keth child, no bigger than a human 10-year-old. "When we come to your Earth," the Emperor said, "we will do this to every human child we find. We will make you watch as we feast on them. Then we will make decorations from their bones." The message ended with all the Nigma leaders laughing together. The bridge of the Guardian was completely silent. Tony had seen many terrible things during his years in space, but nothing like this. These weren't just aggressive aliens, they were pure evil. "Sir," Helen said quietly, "I'm picking up more communications. The Nigma are broadcasting that message to every world in their empire. They're treating the murder of those prisoners like entertainment." Sam looked up from his navigation station. "Captain, what kind of beings make entertainment out of torturing children?" Tony didn't answer. He was thinking about his own daughter back on Earth, safe in school, playing with her friends. The thought of Nigma creatures hurting her or any child made him feel sick with rage. "Commander Davis," Tony said, "what else are you hearing from Nigma Communications?" Helen worked at her station for several minutes before responding. "Sir, they're not just preparing for war. They're preparing for what they call the Great Harvest. They plan to invade 43 different star systems. They have lists of how many beings live on each world and how they plan to use them. Use them how? Some for slaves, some for food, some for sport hunting. They have detailed plans for turning captured children into soldiers for their army. They plan to make parents watch their children being trained to kill other prisoners." Tony felt something cold settle in his stomach. In all his years dealing with hostile aliens, he had never encountered evil this pure. Most aggressive species fought for understandable reasons like territory or resources. The Nigma fought because they enjoyed causing pain. "Sir," Sam said, "we have an incoming priority message from Admiral Morrison." Tony opened the communication channel. Admiral Morrison's face appeared on the screen, and Tony could see the same cold anger in his eyes that he felt in his own heart. "Captain Garcia," the Admiral said, "I've been monitoring your transmissions. Have the Nigma responded to our warning?" "Yes, sir. They responded by murdering prisoners and threatening to eat human children." Morrison nodded grimly. "I was afraid of that. Captain, I'm ordering all 3 ships to return to human space immediately. Jump to the coordinates I'm sending you now." "Sir, what about the warning mission?" "The warning has been delivered and ignored. The Nigma have made their choice." Morrison paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was hard as steel. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them to initiate Protocol 7 immediately." Tony felt his heart skip a beat. Every human military officer knew about Protocol 7, but none of them had ever thought it would actually be used. It was humanity's most secret and most terrible weapon, created for exactly this situation. "Sir, are you sure?" Tony asked. "Captain, they threatened to eat our children. They showed us that they plan to harvest billions of innocent beings across the galaxy. They have proven that they cannot be reasoned with and will never stop their expansion." Morrison's voice grew quieter but more determined. "Protocol 7 was created for monsters exactly like the Nigma. Send the message." As the 3 human ships jumped away from Nigma space, Tony thought about what would happen next. The Nigma believed they had frightened humanity into retreat. They thought humans were weak and easily scared. They were about to learn how wrong they were. And hidden bases across human space, Weapons that had been sleeping for 2 centuries began to wake up. Ships that had never been seen by alien eyes started powering their engines. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment began preparing for war. The Nigma had ignored humanity's warning. They had chosen cruelty over peace, murder over mercy. Now they would face the consequences of that choice, but they would never see it coming. Deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon, Director Claire Thompson walked through corridors that most humans didn't know existed. The facility was called Lunar Base 7 on official records, but everyone who worked there knew its real name. This was the home of Protocol 7, humanity's most closely guarded secret. For 200 years, humans had been exploring space and meeting new alien races. Most of these meetings had been peaceful, but Earth's leaders knew that someday they might encounter a species too dangerous to negotiate with. Protocol 7 was humanity's answer to that possibility. Claire stopped at a massive metal door marked with warning signs in dozens of languages. She placed her hand on a scanner and spoke her name clearly. The door opened with a deep rumble, revealing a chamber larger than most city blocks. Inside, thousands of people worked at computer stations and control panels. Giant screens showed star maps with moving dots representing ships across the galaxy. This was the command center for humanity's real military, the one that other alien species had never seen. Director Thompson called Colonel Nick Roberts as he approached her. Nick was the commander of the 7th Extermination Fleet, a group of warships that officially didn't exist. All units are reporting ready. We can begin the first phase in 6 hours. Claire nodded. She had hoped this day would never come, but the Nigma had made it necessary. What's the status of our intelligence gathering? Lieutenant Emma Stone has completed her reconnaissance mission, Nick replied. Her ship Shadow has mapped every Nigma military base, every population center, and every government facility across their 47 star systems. Emma Stone was one of humanity's best pilots. Her ship used cloaking technology that made it invisible to most sensors. She had spent weeks sneaking through Nigma space, gathering the information they needed for what came next. The Nigma never detected her, Nick continued. They have no idea we can move through their territory without being seen. They still think we only have the 3 ships they met at their border. Claire walked to a large display screen that showed the Nigma Empire. Red dots marked their military bases. Yellow dots showed their major cities. Blue dots indicated worlds where they kept enslaved populations from other species. Dr. Matt Phillips joined them at the display. Matt led the Biological Warfare Division, a group of scientists who studied alien diseases and created weapons that could target specific species. It was unpleasant work, but sometimes necessary. Director, the biological agents are ready for deployment, Matt said quietly. We've created 17 different viruses that will target Nigma physiology while leaving other species completely unharmed. The enslaved populations will be safe. Claire felt sick thinking about biological weapons. But the Nigma had forced this choice. They had shown no mercy to the species they conquered. They tortured children for entertainment and planned to eat human babies. Sometimes the only way to stop a monster was to become something terrible yourself. How long until the viruses take effect? She asked. 48 hours after deployment, Matt replied. The viruses will spread through their population centers quickly. It will be painless for most of them. Much more merciful than what they did to their victims. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council was meeting in emergency session. Ambassador Carol Martinez stood before representatives from 19 allied species, explaining what humanity was about to do. The Nigma ignored our final warning, Carol said calmly. They responded by murdering prisoners and threatening to harvest our children for food. Under Article 12 of the Galactic Charter, humanity is exercising its right to defend innocent life. The Altarian representative Veltar looked distressed. But surely complete extinction is too extreme. There must be Nigma who are not evil. Carol activated a holographic display showing intercepted Nigma communications. Our intelligence shows that 97% of adult Nigma actively participate in their empire's atrocities. The remaining 3% are considered defective by their own society and are kept as slaves. She changed the display to show Nigma schools where children were taught to torture small animals. Nigma young are trained from birth to see cruelty as strength. Their entire culture is built on the belief that causing pain is good and showing mercy is weakness. The Koman warrior Great-Tal spoke up. What about the enslaved beings on Nigma worlds? How will you protect them during your attack? All human military actions will use precision weapons that target only Nigma life forms, Carol explained. Enslaved populations will be protected and freed during the operation. Meanwhile, Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of a ship that no alien had ever seen. The UES Annihilator was 10 times larger than the Defender and carried weapons that could crack planets in half. It was one of 50 such ships that humanity had built in secret over the past century. Admiral reported. His communications officer, all fleets are in position. We have ships positioned around every major Nigma system simultaneously. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The Nigma Empire sprawled across 47 star systems, but humanity had surrounded all of them at once. The Nigma military was still celebrating their threats against human children. They had no idea that death was already at their doorstep. "Sir," said Captain Kelly, who had been transferred to the Annihilator for this mission, "the Nigma are broadcasting another message. They're showing footage of them planning their invasion of Earth. They're discussing which human cities to attack." First, Morrison watched the Nigma transmission with cold eyes. The alien leaders were laughing as they talked about burning human schools and enslaving human children. They were treating the planned genocide of humanity like a fun game. They still don't understand what they're facing, Morrison said quietly. They think we're just another weak species they can bully and destroy. "Sir, how do you want to proceed?" Kelly asked. Morrison turned to address his entire bridge crew. These were men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment. They understood that sometimes peaceful people had to do terrible things to protect the innocent. For 2 centuries, humanity has sought peaceful solutions to every conflict, Morrison said. We have offered friendship to every species we've met. We have shared our knowledge and our resources freely. We have tried to build a galaxy where all intelligent life can thrive in peace. He paused, looking at the display showing Nigma space. The Nigma have rejected our friendship. They have mocked our offers of peace. They have threatened our children and planned to harvest billions of innocent beings for food. They have proven that they cannot be reasoned with and will never stop there. Expansion. Morrison's voice grew harder. Today, we show the galaxy why every species that has met humanity speaks of us with respect. We show them why even our enemies have learned to fear us. We show them that while humans prefer peace, we are prepared to wage total war to protect the innocent. He turned to his weapons officer. All ships, commence Operation Cleansing Fire. Phase 1 begins now. Across Nigma space, invisible human ships suddenly appeared out of hyperspace. Their weapons began firing before the Nigma even knew they were under attack. Military bases that had stood for centuries vanished in flashes of light. Nigma warships exploded before they could raise their shields. The Nigma Empire, which had terrorized dozens of species and conquered 47 star systems, found itself under attack from enemies they couldn't see and weapons they didn't understand. In their capital city, Nigma leaders who had been laughing about eating human children suddenly realized they were fighting for their lives. But it was already too late. Humanity had given them every chance to choose peace. Now they would face the consequences of choosing war. 6 months had passed since the first human ships appeared in Nigma space. Captain Ryan Kelly walked through the ruins of what had once been the Nigma capital city. The massive buildings made from alien bones had crumbled to dust. The streets, decorated with the skulls of conquered species, were now empty and silent. The war had lasted exactly 43 days. The Nigma Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for decades, no longer existed. Ryan stopped in front of a memorial that human engineers were building. It was made of white stone and carved with the names of every species the Nigma had destroyed. At the top, written in the flowing script of the Kef language, were the words, "Never again." Dr. Amy Watson joined him at the memorial. She had spent the past months interviewing survivors from the liberated worlds, documenting their stories for the historical record. How many species did they wipe out completely? Ryan asked. Amy looked at her tablet sadly. 17 intelligent species were completely extinct. The Kef, the Morvuk, the gentle Zephyrians who lived in the clouds of gas giants. All gone forever. She scrolled through more data. 43 other species were enslaved. Most of them are free now, but many are so traumatized they may never recover. The Nigma didn't just enslave their bodies. They broke their spirits. Ryan nodded grimly. He had seen some of the liberated slaves. Many of them still flinched when humans approached, expecting more pain. It would take years, maybe generations, for them to heal from what the Nigma had done to them. General Pete Williams walked up to them. His uniform was dusty from inspecting the cleanup operations across the former Nigma worlds. "How goes the liberation effort?" Ryan asked. Pete's face was grim, but satisfied. "We've freed over 2 billion enslaved beings from 47 different worlds. Most of them are healthy enough to return to their home planets. Others need medical treatment first." "What about the Nigma survivors?" "There are about 3 million left," Pete said. "All civilians, mostly young ones who weren't fully trained in their empire's cruelty yet. We've moved them to a single world where they can live under supervision." Dr. Susan Blake approached their group. She had been working with the surviving Nigma, trying to understand if any of them could be rehabilitated. "What's your assessment, Doctor?" Ryan asked. Susan sighed deeply. "The adult Nigma are exactly what we expected. Even in defeat, they show no remorse for their actions. They're angry that we stopped them, but they don't understand why what they did was wrong. Many of them are planning revenge if they ever get the chance." "And the young ones?" "There's hope for some of them," Susan said. "The ones under 10 years old might be able to learn a different way of living. But it will require constant supervision and education. We're essentially trying to rebuild their entire understanding of right and wrong." Admiral Morrison arrived with a small group of alien representatives. The Galactic Council had sent observers to witness the end of the Nigma Empire and see how humanity handled victory. Ambassador Carol Martinez walked with them, explaining what they were seeing. "The cleanup operation will take another year," she told the alien observers. "But every enslaved being will be freed and given medical care. Every damaged world will be restored as much as possible." Veltar, the Altarian representative, looked around at the destroyed Nigma city. "I must admit, Ambassador Martinez, I did not expect humans to be so thorough. Your military destroyed the Nigma Empire completely in just 6 weeks." Carol nodded. "When humanity decides that something must be done, we do it completely. Half measures would have left room for the Nigma to rebuild and continue their cruelty." Greg Toll, the Corvan warrior, examined the remains of a Nigma weapons factory. "Your technology is far beyond what we knew humans possessed. How long have you been preparing for this kind of war?" General Williams answered honestly. "Since the day humans first left Earth and realized we might not be alone in the universe. We hoped we would never need these weapons, but we prepared for the possibility." "Where are these weapons now?" asked Zexalon, the Centauri representative. "Returning to their hidden bases," Williams replied. "The galaxy doesn't need to fear them. Humanity only uses its full military power against threats like the Nigma Empire. They walked to the center of the ruined city, where a large plaza had been cleared. Thousands of freed slaves from dozens of different species were gathering there. Today was the official ceremony marking the end of the Nigma Empire. Doc Watson had organized the ceremony to honor the victims and celebrate the survivors. Representatives from every species that had suffered under Nigma rule would speak. The first speaker was an elderly Keth female named Silicor. She was one of only 300 Keth survivors in the entire galaxy. When she spoke, her voice was weak but determined. "My people lived in peace for thousands of years," she said. "We created music and art. We cared for our children and honored our elders. The Nigma took all of that away in a single day." She paused, gathering strength. "But today, justice has been done. The monsters who destroyed my world are gone. My few surviving people can rebuild, knowing that the galaxy is safe again." Other survivors spoke after her. Each told similar stories of loss and suffering, but also of hope and gratitude. Many thanked humanity specifically for not giving up. When diplomacy failed, Admiral Morrison was the final speaker. He stood before the gathering of thousands of freed beings and spoke simply and honestly. "The Nigma Empire gave us many chances to avoid this outcome," he said. "We offered them peace, and they chose war. We offered them mercy, and they chose cruelty. We warned them of the consequences, and they laughed at us." He looked around at the ruins of the Nigma capital. "Today, the galaxy is safer because a great evil has been removed. But we take no joy in destruction, even the destruction of our enemies. We did what was necessary to protect innocent life, nothing more." Morrison's voice grew stronger. "Let this be a lesson to any species that might consider following the Nigma path. Humanity prefers peace and friendship. We want to explore the stars together, sharing knowledge and building a better galaxy for all intelligent life." He paused, making sure everyone understood his next words. "But if you choose to threaten the innocent, if you choose to enslave and murder other beings, if you choose to ignore our warnings and continue your cruelty, then you will face the same fate as the Nigma Empire. You will no longer survive." The ceremony ended in silence. The freed slaves began returning to ships that would take them home to rebuilt worlds. The alien observers from the Galactic Council prepared reports that would spread across the galaxy. As the sun set over the ruins of the Nigma capital, Ryan Kelly stood with his fellow officers and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, peaceful species were living free because humanity had been willing to do terrible things to protect them. The galaxy would remember this day. They would remember that humans could be the kindest friends and the most dangerous enemies. They would remember that humanity's patience had limits, and crossing those limits meant facing consequences beyond imagination. The Nigma Empire had learned this lesson too late. But their destruction would serve as a warning to others for generations to come. The innocent would sleep safely, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, humanity was watching and ready to act when evil rose again. Peace had been restored, but only through the total elimination of those who threatened it. The galaxy was safer, but the price had been the complete extinction of an entire empire. Sometimes, that was the only choice left to make.